Welcome to the Life You Love podcast.
We're your hosts, Grace Lemire
and Erin Convertini.
This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers.
For the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to.
We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love.
Housing is typically your biggest expense, which means your choices for where you live actually do make up a large part of your financial life. But we're firm believers that housing is just as much a lifestyle choice as it is a financial choice because we spend so much of our lives at home as well. The rent versus buy debate is always such a hot topic. And as two girls in their mid-20s that are at different points in their home buying journeys, we're covering all of the life and financial factors that go into purchasing a home. I've been getting so many questions on how to know if home ownership is right for you. So hopefully we can help you come to that conclusion in today's episode.
Do you want to kick us off with your big news? Because I don't think you've shared it on the podcast yet. I think you've just shared it on your socials.
No, I haven't on the podcast. And I kind of shared it a little bit impulsively last week on my socials. But I was like, I just need to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm like confusing myself, going back and forth on whether or not I should post about it or not. But my little secret is that I actually did buy a house 4 months ago at this point? We're already
last year when you
put the
4
months into 2025, which is literally so crazy. But I did actually purchase a home back in December and I haven't talked about it yet just because I wasn't sure if anything was going to fall through. Obviously, I purchased a new construction townhome. So it's not built yet, which is why I haven't moved. I'm still in my apartment. My house is still just a pile of dirt at this point. But that's kind of why I wasn't sharing it, just because I wasn't sure if anything was going to fall through and I didn't want to speak it into existence and then kind of go back on that. And I also just wanted a second to be secure in my decision without everybody else's opinion. So I did purchase a house. It's up in Pittsburgh. Obviously, I have been talking about moving back to Pittsburgh. So yeah, I'm really excited. And yeah, we're going to talk in today's episode about what the home buying process looks like and some different factors that we're weighing on deciding whether or not home ownership is right for you.
Yeah, I know you were saying in the intro too, we are in different stages of our home buying journey. And it's interesting because I feel like we're coming into this conversation today with different perspectives. And I mean, I'm saving for a home, but I think I initially thought when I moved down to Florida that I would move down here, live here for my 15-month lease, and then go home back to Massachusetts and buy a house. But the more time I'm here, because I've been in Florida for a little under 3 months, I'm realizing that 15 months is going to fly by and it doesn't feel like enough time to explore everything that St. Pete has to offer. I think if I was in a different city, maybe there would be other cities that I'd be there for 15 months and be like, yeah, I feel like I've seen what I need to see and I can go home. But I don't know 100% that 15 months is going to feel like enough here. And everyone keeps saying, well, you don't need to decide now. You don't need to know. But I'm like, you kind of do, in a way, need to know in advance. If I wanted to buy a home when my lease is up here in April 2026, that's a year away. So I do kind of need to know what I'm going to do in the next few months because the home buying process can be very long, right? And also I'm saving for a down payment. I need to think all those things through. And so the more I thought about it the last month or so, I feel like I'm more so leaning towards renting here for, maybe renewing my lease and being here for a couple of years before I consider buying anything. And I don't know where I'll buy. I think that which we're going to talk a lot about in today's episode, but I think there's so much pressure sometimes to buy. I think also for us when we're sharing information about our finances on the internet and about our lives, people also come in with the unsolicited advice and opinions about what we should be doing with that money. And I think there is a lot of feedback around, well, you spend all this money on rent. Why don't you just buy? Why don't you just buy whatever? And it creates a lot of external pressure, but there's so much that goes into buying a home beyond just the financial side of it. I am curious, I want you to share a little bit more about going back to Pittsburgh and making that decision to buy because you were in Pittsburgh, moved to Nashville, and then going back to Pittsburgh. And obviously now you're going to have a house in Pittsburgh. So you're kind of committing to I want to live in Pittsburgh,
Yeah, 100%. Obviously this episode today is kind of talking about both the financial considerations of purchasing a home, but also the lifestyle considerations. And they're both important. One is not more important than the other. They are both so important. And the lifestyle considerations almost impact the financial considerations because if you buy a home and then you decide that you absolutely hate living there and need to move in 2 years, the financial impact of that is going to be very drastic because it's very expensive to purchase a home. And I think the stats say that you don't recoup a lot of the sunk costs of purchasing for 4 or 5 years after buying. So that was a big decision on my part. I feel like for you, kind of exactly what you just explained is your big reason for not purchasing, because there's no way to know after 3 months of living in St. Pete if Florida is where you want to stay permanently. You wouldn't know that for 2 or 3 years after living there. You could live there for 2 years and in 2.5 years be like, well, I'm not sure. Like, you know what I mean? That's just not enough
Yeah.
time. But on the flip side, if you were in a situation where you moved to St. Pete and a year in, you were like, okay, I know for sure I want to move back to Massachusetts. I'm being pulled back. That's kind of the boat that I was in, like if I moved to Nashville and I was like, well, I'm not really loving Nashville, but I know I don't want to go back to Pittsburgh. Let me go to another city. I wouldn't be looking to buy in another city. I would be looking to rent. So it's kind of like the lifestyle consideration of, are you sure? Like, are you absolutely positive that the place that you're going to is where you want to stay permanently? And not even just the city, but I think another kind of like underrated thing that people don't take into consideration with home ownership too is, do you like the flexibility of being able to move around every 1 to 2 years because you're like bored with your space? And that's totally okay. If you like moving around apartments every 1 or 2 years just to have like a little bit of a change of environment, then renting is a really good option for you. But I know for me, I have moved 5 times in the last 4 years since graduating from college, and this move is going to be a sixth. And I'm just so tired of like not being in permanent spaces, and I'm ready to just settle somewhere and be somewhere for 5 or 6 years that I can grow into and run my business out of and just like be settled. So I think that is like a big lifestyle consideration for whether or not you're thinking, is ownership right for you in the next few years?
I think people sometimes, because I know I felt this way, there's like, not that it's taboo to admit that you like the flexibility and you don't like being tied down anywhere, but I think for some reason there it's like, yeah, like taboo or something, or like looked down upon when people say that. I feel like people struggle to admit that, but it's so true because I think about it. And for me, a lifestyle consideration with buying a home that I started to think about was, I don't want to buy a home until I'm 100% sure that I know I want to live somewhere for at least 3 to 5 years. And I don't know that about anywhere. I don't know that because even let's say I go back to Boston, I don't I don't know what neighborhood I would want to be in. I would need to like consider some areas more. And to be honest, I like the fact that, let's say I were to meet someone later this year and next year they want me to move with them and they live in Chicago or Dallas or whatever. I would go. Like, I'm not tied down to St. Pete. I'm not tied down to Boston. I don't feel it like I would be open to living in another city. So right now it makes way more sense for me to rent because life could take me literally anywhere. And who knows, maybe I will go live in another city. But I also like the ability to just pack up and go on a moment's notice if I needed to, which you just can't. You could do it with a home, like you could make it work, but it would really suck and it would definitely impact the financial side of it. I don't know. I just, yeah.
Yeah. No, the not being sure on neighborhoods thing is so prevalent too. If you aren't 100% sure what area of a city you want to live in, then you obviously can't commit to purchasing there. That definitely wasn't the situation that I was in. The other thing that is really important with location is being honest with yourself about what type of lifestyle you're okay with. Because when you're looking to purchase a home, unless you have millions of dollars, unless that's your budget, you are not going to be able to look downtown in a city. For me in Pittsburgh, like could look at, it's called the Strip District. Like that's the nicest area to purchase these like beautiful row homes and stuff. If I had millions of dollars, maybe, but like that's not my budget. But for me, I'm like, okay, I'm at a phase of my life where I kind of prefer the suburban lifestyle. Where I purchased is like 20 minutes outside the city. So it's honestly like I really did prioritize location while being okay being outside of the city, because that's just what your budget is going to allow. Versus when you're renting, yes, it's going to be kind of expensive, but you can kind of splurge a little bit on higher rent to be in like the Strip District of Pittsburgh or like whatever your city's equivalent is. And a lot of young people, like they want their living space to be a sense of community and a sense of meeting people and fun. And you're going to get that with an apartment complex. You're not going to get that by purchasing a home.
That's another thing I keep thinking about too, is I previously lived in the suburbs before I moved to St. Pete, like in Mass. I was an hour outside the city and it was all families that were living there. It wasn't a lot of young people. There wasn't really anything to do. And here, I can walk to so many things because I live in downtown. So I thought about when I was thinking about buying a home on this timeline of, April 2026, I was like, do I want to give up the convenience that I have right now and the fact that I can walk to all these places? I'm close to all these things. I have all these amazing amenities at my apartment. Do I want to give up the luxury of living in a city? No, like this is my first time really living in a city. I went to college in a suburb in the middle of nowhere. Like I want to enjoy living in a city before I give that up. Because to me, when I buy a home, when I think of home, like a house and a home and whatever, I think of a place with a big backyard and a lot of space. I think of a quiet street where like my future kids can like ride their bike down the street and I'm not worried about them. You know what I mean? It's not like a busy area. Like I think of a quiet neighborhood. That's not going to be in a downtown area. That is a little bit further out. And I don't have a desire to buy something like in the downtown area. Like if that's going to be where I raise kids, I would be open to like buying a high rise condo or something in downtown and then eventually selling it or renting it out and then buying a home outside the city. But like, again, I can't commit to being in anywhere for 3 to 5 years right now. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would say that like most people I know, if they were coming to me for advice, and I'm talking like most people I know in their mid 20s around our age, if they would come to me for advice on whether they should rent or buy, I would say to like continue renting, especially on the like meeting people aspect.
Yeah.
I'm going back to Pittsburgh where I'm like very secure in, like I'm not going out every single day with the intent of making new friends and meeting new people and stuff. That's just not really the phase of life that I'm in. I feel like I'm kind of in a phase of life where I'm ready to have a little bit more space and more privacy. Like the parts of my day that I really enjoy are taking my dog on a walk. The complex that I bought in, since it is a townhome, it is more in like a community feel. There's a gym in there. Well, they're building it, but there's a gym in there. They're putting like a little restaurant in the middle of the like community. There's a bunch of sidewalks everywhere and I can walk. It's literally 1 minute to, I'm not going to share too much actually, because I don't want people to know where I live. I'm sure everyone here is like cool, but there's like sidewalks. I can walk my dog around and there's parks and like workout studios in the town. So it's a really like busy suburb, but it is still a suburb. And a lot of people do want to be walking distance in the middle of a city to all of the things. And if that's the case, like renting 100% makes sense. I feel like for me, I was kind of in a situation where I obviously knew I wanted to be somewhere for 4 or 5 years, but obviously when I'm buying a townhome, it's not my forever home, right? I was like, but I actually think I'm in the perfect phase of life to buy something that will take me until the point of being in my forever home. So I'm 26 this week, and realistically, I'll probably be in this house for 5 or 6 years. Like ideally, this is the house that I have my first maybe or first two kids in. And then once we outgrow the space, then rent it out and move into our forever home. My boyfriend's not moving in at this point either, but maybe one day. But yeah, so I was just kind of at a point where I'm like, okay, I actually feel like I am in the perfect space to buy something with the intent of potentially renting it out or in 5 or 6 years and moving into my forever home.
It does honestly make so much sense. It really does. Especially, I think, since you want to be back in Pittsburgh, it doesn't make sense to like rent another year in Nashville when like you want to be physically in Pittsburgh for the foreseeable future or for forever, and you're in the financial position to be able to do it. And I think on the topic of like the financial side of things, I think what really kills me, and I feel like I just like it needs to be said, is when people are like renting is such a waste of money. And I just have to say, you unless you're living with like family or friends for free, or you have some sort of job where they pay for your housing, you have to pay for housing regardless. You have to have a roof over your head. So I understand people are like, well, when I'm paying my mortgage, it's an investment. Yes. However, if you're making a bad purchase, right? Like you're not buying a house that is in an area that's gonna, grow in value or whatever. It's not a sound investment. It's to me, it's like it's really not like, is it actually worth it? I
I
just
will
feel like it
say,
becomes a slippery slope, but you have to pay for housing either way.
you
So
literally, yeah,
we've got to stop with the like rent is like the biggest waste of money in the history of ever, because
yeah.
you have to pay for housing.
And I will say, since I bought a new build, I went through the pre-approval process. I haven't actually secured my loan yet because you do that right before you close. So once the house is already built, so I'll have more accurate numbers around that. But I did go through, like, I have all the estimates and stuff. I know around like how much my house is going to cost me every month. The amount of money that goes to your mortgage principal per month is so low. Out of your,
Mm-hmm.
let's call it a $2,500 monthly payment in the first like year or something, the amount of money per month that's going to your mortgage principal is probably, don't quote me on this because I don't have the numbers like off the top of my head, probably like under $1,000 because property taxes, insurance, mortgage interest, which mortgage
Mm-hmm.
interest rates are around what, like 6.5 or 7% right now. Like so much of that money is sunk costs. So to
Mm-hmm.
say that renting is a waste of money, like there are sunk costs either way. Like
Right.
all of the money that you're spending on a monthly payment every month is not going to your equity. That's not how it works.
I think a lot of people forget about property taxes and insurance. And I know that's things that I've thought about being in St. Pete because insurance is a lot more here because of the hurricane risk. And that's something that I think about a lot with buying a home. There are areas that are not flood zones and, things like that. But is it really going to be that much of an investment long? Because I don't know if I'll live here forever, even if I did buy something here. So it's just like, I don't know. I remember I was writing a blog once for a client and it was on homeownership in Texas. And I think it's Texas that has like some of the highest property taxes, or maybe it's a specific city there that I was researching. But I was shook. This was a few years ago. I was shook at how much property taxes are. And that's a sunk cost. I mean, you're paying for, it's taxes. It goes towards, things that you use, but like, still, it's a sunk cost, like
Yep. And
either
I will
way.
say, I think anyone who is even slightly considering the home ownership process in the next like 1 to 2 years, talk to a lender as soon as possible. A lot of times they can do like a soft credit pool, so it doesn't actually impact your credit score, but they can give you much more accurate estimates on things like property taxes, insurance, interest rates that you can qualify for with your credit score, because all of those are going to completely throw off your home budget. Everyone always says like how to figure out how much home you can afford. Those things are going to literally completely wreck your budget. I know I had no idea how to estimate property taxes. And I will say one thing, like your property taxes depend on your county. And the only thing that I'll say about my location is that I didn't end up purchasing in Allegheny County, which is the county that Pittsburgh is in. I'm in one of like the neighboring counties, which makes my property tax, it took my property tax from 1.5% to 0.5%. So a whole
Hmm.
percent lower. I got my quote for property taxes per month is $580. Can you imagine if that's a percent higher to purchase in Allegheny County?
Oh my
So,
gosh. And that's
yes,
like a sunk, that's just like it's
it's
like
a
your
yes.
version of an HOA fee type of thing.
100%. 100%. Yeah. So, those things, like, talk to a lender to see what's even feasible because all of the costs, they literally add up so much.
I know, like I look at houses and stuff on Zillow all the time just for fun. I genuinely think it's really fun. But I think that's something people forget a lot about. They look at the cost and they think, okay, well, it says on Zillow, which I mean, Zillow does estimate, the mortgage plus property taxes and insurance and things like that when it gives you an estimate of what it would cost every month. But you really don't know until you do talk to a lender and kind of run the numbers on it. But I think a lot of people view it as, well, I could afford the mortgage. But then it's like, there's so much else that goes into that, And I think we were just talking about this on another episode that we did, like sometimes the mortgage on the house that is smaller, it's like less square footage than an apartment. The mortgage, property taxes, all the stuff ends up being just as much, if not more. It goes back to that lifestyle decision of would it even make sense? I have a 2 bedroom apartment. It's completely updated, tons of amenities. I love it. Great natural light, great location, whatever. Do I want to move 20 minutes outside the city, potentially into a smaller home or a home that's more outdated? Do I actually want to do that at this point in time and have to mow my own lawn as well?
Yes.
No.
Yep. I basically said the only way that I would purchase is if I got something that the location was convenient to get downtown, which again, not sharing my location, but I like totally splurged on location. I was basically only looking at new builds because we got really spoiled with luxury apartment
Mm-hmm.
complexes. Everything in my apartment is completely updated. I was looking at places on Zillow and I was like, these are $500,000 and everything's outdated. There's
Mm-hmm.
popcorn ceilings. Like I have 10-foot ceilings in my luxury
Yeah.
apartment. Yeah, and the HOA thing too. Everyone kind of talks down on an HOA, but I was like, I am a 25-year-old girl. I don't own a lawnmower. I don't, and I
Want
don't
to
want to
own
purchase
one.
one. I don't. My HOA is only $130 a month,
That's not
and
bad.
they are building a gym. So there are some amenities and things. So I don't think it's that bad. But yeah, everyone that comments on our videos and are like, I could have a 3,000 square foot home for the $2,000 that you're paying in rent. Literally, no, you can't.
But
No,
also,
you can't.
one thing that gets me about this conversation is, and I feel like it is just the feedback online from people, where you live and where you want to live matters so much. Could I go buy a house? I always say rural Nebraska, which is so funny because one of my friends lives in Nebraska and she's always like, stop picking on Nebraska. But I'm like, I just have to because to me, I'm sorry if anyone listening is from Nebraska. Nebraska is the most random state to me. It is. When I think like the most random state, it's Nebraska always. But if I go buy a house in rural Nebraska, could I go buy probably a freaking mansion there based on like what I pay for rent now? Yes, absolutely. Do I have any desire to live there? Not at all. If I want to buy something, it's because I think the location is like the most important thing because that's something you can't change. You could buy an outdated home and scrape the popcorn ceilings off and change the floors and paint the walls and whatever, but you cannot change the location of the home. If it is, unless it's one of those little homes, you can pick it up and move it elsewhere, right? Like it's there, it's in the ground. So to me, I'm like, it's not worth, I don't want to buy a home in an area I don't love for the sake of, oh, well, now I own a home and I can afford this mortgage. I would rather wait until I can buy the exact home that I want. And it makes sense from a financial perspective and a lifestyle perspective because it's ultimately where you're living at the end of the day. And I don't want to live in like a rural Nebraska. Or people are like, why not buy something, they tell me about these different areas of Florida that are about 45 minutes to an hour away from St. Pete. So like 30 to 45 minutes outside of Tampa. I don't want to be an hour and a half from the beach at this stage of my life. I don't think I want to be an hour and a half from the beach ever. To me, that's too far, right? Like there are certain things that it doesn't make sense to give up simply for the sake of owning a home. And I think this this kind of goes into just the idea that I think we view buying a home as the ultimate, like the pinnacle of success in a way. And I'm not saying that buying a home is not an accomplishment because it absolutely is an accomplishment. But I don't think that it should be done at the expense of buying something that you're not ready to buy or that you don't really want to buy or something that's not really a sound investment. Because I do feel like a lot of people feel the pressure to buy a home and then they buy something. And I just hear so many stories of regrets of like, we bought a house and we rushed into it and we just took like the first one that we found or whatever, the first one that accepted our offer. And there were so many things we didn't do. There were so many things we made mistakes on that we overlooked. And it's okay, right? These things happen. And all you can do in that situation is start to work yourself out of it and figure out, okay, now I made this decision. Now I've got to just pick up the pieces and, focus on making this decision right. But I feel like people need to slow down a little bit and really, really think it through. It's possibly the biggest purchase you will ever make in your life, other than a college education, because that is right up there in being hundreds of thousands of dollars usually. But it's one of the biggest purchases. So really, really think it through before you do it. It will be an accomplishment regardless of when you do it. You don't win an award for like buying a home a year earlier, or you don't win an award for being able to say, I bought a home in my 20s versus I bought a home in my 30s, or I bought a home in my 30s versus I bought a home in my 40s. Like it at the end of the day, if it's not a sound investment that you're genuinely excited about, it doesn't matter whether you bought a home at 28 or if you bought a home at 32. I think there's a lot of these life accomplishments that we want to wear as like badges of honor, but we don't do them for the right reasons. And I think when it comes to homeownership, that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's so much more than just like the financial side. It's so much more than the lifestyle side. There's so much that you need to consider when you're making that big decision.
Totally agree. I do think that people think of it as like the epitome of financial success, and it's seen as so much stability. And if you buy a home, you're set for the rest of your life. But yeah, that's definitely not the case at all. I also think it's really important to consider the opportunity cost of all of the money that you're going to put down on your home and what you could do if you invested that money instead. Everyone says again, like, well, homeownership, that's the epitome of financial success, but having a lot of money in your investment portfolio, that's also pretty good. And I think the numbers actually show that regardless whether you invest the money or you put it into a home, the the rate of return or what you're going to get out of that money, the numbers kind of show regardless, you're fine. As long as you're doing something smart with that money, whether you're putting it into the stock market or you are buying your home because that makes sense for you and where you're at in your life, either way, you're still doing something smart with your money. I mean, if you decide like, oh no, I don't want to buy a home right now, so I just like have all this extra money to spend and you're not doing anything else with it, that it doesn't really work that way. But if you're like, no, I have $30,000 in my home down payment savings, but I don't really think in the next like 4 or 5 years I really want to purchase, like there's a big opportunity cost of not investing that money as well. So there's so much that goes into it. And then I know like there's also the big debate of, okay, if I'm going to purchase a home, realistically, how much money do I need? Could I put less than 20% down, or should I be saving for a 20% home down payment? The numbers, it is hard to save a 20% down payment in 2025. Like we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, 20% on. That is so much money. That's $100,000 on a $500,000 home. And in a lot of areas, 500,000 is like a starter home in a lot of cities. So it's no, and then on top of that, you need closing costs, which you're probably looking at another 20K on top of that. You want to make sure you still have money in your emergency fund. Again, we're looking at the opportunity cost of, if you're saving up $120,000 because you want to put 20% down on a home, not investing that money in the 5 to 10 years that it's going to take you to save for that, that is, yeah, it's a big opportunity cost. So I totally agree with you. I think it's kind of seen as like the epitome of financial success when it shouldn't be, because there's a lot of people who stay renting and are super successful with their finances. I think the other thing on that too, with kind of like the age, I think a lot of people feel rushed into home ownership because they feel like they have to own a home before they have kids, which is so not true. You can rent houses. Like it's not a luxury high-rise apartment complex or owning a home. There are houses that you could rent and you could stay renting forever if you wanted to. Like this is obviously not like bashing on home ownership completely. Obviously, I just did it, but this is just like kind of showing you like there's a lot of options out there. And if you're feeling like it might not make sense for you, like you don't have to talk yourself into it. There's a lot of other options.
Yeah. I think like, I mean, I want to be clear that I think homeownership is absolutely an accomplishment, and I look forward to the day that I buy a home and stuff. And I think it'll be amazing. I can't wait. Like I think it'll be really fun. But I think that I just hope that this takes some of the pressure off of people who are listening to this and they're like, I want to buy a home, but they're feeling that pressure to do it on some sort of timeline or before a certain age, or yeah, before they have kids or before they get married or whatever. It's really like it is going to be the probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest investment that you or purchase, I mean, that you ever make in your life. So if you're going to do it, just genuinely think it through. And if it's not the time for you to do it, don't do it. Like there's no, it's really okay. You're not morally superior because you bought a home, and you're not morally inferior because you rent. It doesn't make you any better or worse than somebody else. Are there financial considerations and pros and cons to each? Absolutely. And for some people, they're really happy in their decision to rent and they want to chill renting, and there's people who are really happy in their decision that they bought and they want to chill there and they like buying it. It really, it doesn't have to be this like, oh, I'm better because I bought a house, or I'm worse because I rent, or whatever. It's just, I don't know. I think the debate gets so nasty online sometimes. I don't know. I feel like we see content that's just really, I don't know, discouraging to people who are in both boats here. And I don't know, personally, for example, like you were talking about how much it is to, save for a down payment on a home, which also I get comments from like realtors on my videos whenever I talk about this all the time. And they're like, why put 20% down? Like you could put 3%. I'm like, yes, you could put less down. However, then my mortgage is going to be more. The math is still has to math at the end of the day. So do I want to have a $4,000 mortgage? No. But also, and I feel like this, people get like a little, oh, when I say this, but I have no desire to buy a home on my own at this moment in my life. Maybe it was a few years older and I'm like, okay, I'm really itching for a home, and maybe I'm not like in a relationship at that point. Fine, I'll buy a home by myself. But in this moment in time, do I have any desire to live in an entire single family home by myself, mow my lawn, clean a 2-story home with 4 bedrooms? No, I don't. I really don't. So to me, I'm saving 20% down. Like that's my goal for a $750,000 home. So, because that was around that price that the houses I was interested in Massachusetts were. I mean, Massachusetts is a higher cost of living area. So obviously by the time I go to buy a home, those homes will probably be even more. But I am going into it knowing that I probably will be splitting a down payment with someone. I don't have a desire to do it on my own, but it is a chunk of cash to save. It really is. I mean, gosh, yeah, a $750,000 home, that's for a home in Mass that's in an area I'm interested in and is decently updated. Some of them would still need even more updates, but you're not really finding a home in Massachusetts for $300,000, $400,000 unless you're far outside the city, which I don't want to do,
Yep.
but 20%, it's like,
Yeah.
it is a
Yeah. And it is,
chunk.
again, at this episode, we kind of just wanted to like show you our thought processes to help you draw the conclusion for yourself on whether or not this could make sense for you. And I know your comment about don't have the desire to purchase a home on my own. So many people think that way. And I think the opposite way, which again, no right or wrong answer, but it's just like some people would want to and some people wouldn't. For me, I think I've always been really diligent about getting my finances under control and like being smart with my finances and everything in my 20s on my own before the marriage and the kids. And you know what I mean? Like while I'm still on my own. And it was always like I want to make sure I'm financially independent before I am like with my husband, like for better or for worse. But like I don't know. I've always been like that. I feel like my mom has always instilled that in me. So for me, purchasing on my own was always a big goal for me because I was like, that's always something that's going to be mine. Like I am purchasing this in my name only. I'm the only one putting equity into it. And that's always a place that, God forbid, I could come back to if I needed to. Like when we do eventually move into our family home, if I ever needed a place, I will always have a place to go. So that was kind of a consideration for me as well. Like the goal was to purchase on my own before taking that next step, which a lot of people either don't agree with, they don't think that's a good outlook, or they wouldn't want to purchase on their own, which is totally fine.
But I think it just goes back to also the whole idea that like personal finance is so personal. Like that gives you an extra sense of protection and security. And that might be something that other people aren't worried about or just don't even think about or don't care about, right? Like and that's fine. It really is about what makes sense for you and the lifestyle considerations as well. And it really is such a personal decision. And I wish it was a conversation that had less pressure and less um like morality assigned to the way that you make the decisions and to both sides, because yeah, you really don't win an award either way. You really don't. And it really comes down to your life and are you happy and do you like the decision that you made? Do you like where you live? Does it make sense for you? I know people who they want to buy a fixer upper because they love like looking at a home and being like, okay, I have a vision and I want to execute and I want to decorate and I want to fix this and fix that and whatever. And there are other people where that doesn't interest them whatsoever. They want to move apartments every single year. They want to, whatever. That's totally fine. They want to have a place with a high rise and a cool view and, a really nice pool and whatever. And they don't want to buy a house. That's
Yeah.
fine.
I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to there are ways to get ahead financially no matter what avenue you choose, whether you're in the high rise apartment, whether you get roommates to save less money on your rent, whether you buy a new construction townhome, whether you buy a fixer upper, regardless of the rent versus buy, there are ways to get ahead financially. It's just about picking the lane that feels most aligned with what you want out of your life and then figuring out how you can get ahead financially based off of that. Like I know for me, I don't think it's smart to go into home ownership thinking that you're going to make money on the short term. You're literally never going to. You're going to spend a lot of money up front, but there is a lot of like long-term gain. Your house can appreciate. The spread between your mortgage and rent starts to get greater and greater as rents keeps going up. So there's a lot of like long-term potential and it's kind of a long-term play, but you don't see those gains up front, where with renting, your monthly payment is fixed. You know exactly how much money you have to spend every month. So you can invest the difference. You can invest a lot more when you're not spending $100,000 on a home down payment. So it's just about picking a lane and like being confident in that decision and then figuring out ways to get ahead financially.
And I think both have sacrifices too that have to be made. Like you were talking about the opportunity cost and what you're giving up. Like if you want to save, I'm saving 20% or my goal is to save 50K for a down payment on a home. That's requiring a level of sacrifice in a way where when I have extra cash beyond other things that I'm paying for, it's going in my home sinking fund. And like, would I love to spend, that chunk of cash on a really fun vacation or whatever? Yes, but there are certain decisions that I'm making. And also there are sacrifices that come with homeownership. Like maybe you really do like the flexibility of being able to relocate if need be, but you also really want a yard for your dog and you really want more space and you're engaged and you're thinking about, okay, well, I really want to have a house to move into and have the family home, whatever. Like there will be things either way that you are having to sacrifice, or yeah, okay, there's going to be a lot of upfront costs. So maybe I'm a little bit less cash heavy than I would prefer to be at this stage. Like still have your emergency fund, make sure you're good there. It's a chunk of cash to watch just whoop out the window. And obviously, it's going towards purchasing something that you believe is of equal or greater value, or you believe it's an investment that's going to have a long term return. But like, there are sacrifices either way that you make. And this is the Life You Love pod, it is. And at the end of the day, it has to be a decision that aligns with the life that you love, the life that you want to live and that you enjoy. And it really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks about the choice. Are you happy at the end of the day?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to purchase, you have to make sure it's somewhere that you're genuinely so excited to move into, because if not, you're going to very quickly regret the decision and you never want to be in that situation. But I think that brings us to the end of this episode. We just wanted to chat through our decision-making processes for something like this, because again, your housing is probably the biggest line item in your budget. And there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not it makes sense or whether or not it's something that you want to do. So let us know in Spotify if you enjoyed this episode or how you think through the whole rent versus buy debate. We would love to hear from you guys. You can also DM us on Instagram at the Life You Love Pod. But thanks for tuning into the podcast, and until next week.